This week's episode of Shower Thoughts is sponsored by Headspace. Headspace is the app that helps me and 100 million people with their mental health and well-being with guided meditations, mindfulness practices, breathing and calming exercise, and so much more. I am reducing stress, boosting my mood, and sleeping better. What I love with Headspace is that I also just read this book on mindfulness, and it talked about getting into a flow state and being present. And I always talk about being present, present in like living and life and love. They're all emergent properties that must happen in the present, especially in flow states. And so I have just been really liking Headspace, honestly. So feel good and mean it when you say it. For a limited time, get Headspace free for 60 days. Go to headspace.com/shower. That's HEADSPACE.com/shower to unlock all of Headspace free for 60 days. Headspace.com/shower. Hi guys, this is Sarah Schauer, and this is Shower Thoughts, a podcast for left and right brainers and middle brainers. I say this all the time, but if you have any part of your central nervous system working or even not working, then this is a podcast for you. As long as you're conscious, then that is great. So this is the part 2 to last week's episode on how to forgive yourself, like the actual how to do it and the basic mechanics that kind of structure forgiveness. Please watch the first episode because there is so much information in that one that if you just watch this one or listen to this one, then you're going to miss a lot. You're going to be like, where does that connect? So please watch the first one, listen to it. Also, just kind of general updates. I did record the first episode yesterday because, I usually don't record on Fridays, but I wanted to because I was on such a roll. And there's only one minor update for everyone who is watching on YouTube. You're like, is there something different with your hair? I took out my extensions, and you're like, but they are still long. My hair is very long, but it's thin. So it's mainly for thickness. I just kind of took some pliers and took out the 2 rows of extensions, and now it just feels so good. Because at a certain point, you're like, this is overstimulating, and I just had to take them out. And the woman who does my extensions is going to be really... She's not annoyed. She's like, well, it's an installation fee. And I'm like, well, I'm here to support local businesses. So it's all good and great. But that's the only update from last night. Actually, tonight I'm going to go see Sinners, which is a horror movie. I'm absolutely obsessed with horror, and I've heard good things about it. My favorite horror movie is the Conjuring series. I like to have it on in the background sometimes when I work. That sounds weird, but fear is... very, very stimulating, kind of puts you on your toes. And when you're kind of working from home and it's sort of the same humdrum routine with not a lot of excitement, just kind of taking a quick break and then looking up and seeing a demon on the ceiling, you're like, ah, and then it kind of gets you back in the mood to work, to look at anything but the screen. I should probably switch up my series though, because I've seen The Conjuring so many times. So I'm excited to see Sinners. In the past, I was super afraid of any sort of religious-related scary movie because I have actual religious trauma being raised Southern Baptist. It's kind of interesting, if you think about Christianity as a whole, there's gay people are not fine, but telling children that they're going to burn in hell for all eternity and then kind of going into a very... detailed description of demons and hellfire and a lake of fire and your skin melting off your bones and all that stuff. It's I don't know. I think we have our priorities a bit mixed up. But I'm going to talk about forgiveness. Now, last time, just as a recap for people who refused to listen to the first episode, but please, it's not I'm mad at you. It's because there's going to be a lot of information. So the recap, this is going to be about starting with the neuroscience of forgiveness, and who's likely to be more forgiving are people with higher levels of empathy, lower levels of disgust, and lower levels of depression. So low levels of empathy, high levels of disgust, and high levels of depression will make you less forgiving. Now, since this is it's very hard to separate the moral aspect and the sort of religious aspect of forgiveness, but you can, like we talked about last time with Aristotle's concept of catharsis, you can strip it down to its bare bones and get to the basic mechanism of like release, feeling, I guess catharsis is, relief, but if you want to strip it completely to like the mechanics, the base, it'd be release and, attraction, repulsion, release, because emotions do follow the laws of thermodynamics and physics, because, humans are, we're bound by the laws of physics. So that's how you get to the basics. So I also did want to talk about the roles of guilt and shame. Now, guilt and shame are social emotions. They're also moral emotions. Social emotions involve others. However, guilt and shame are pointed inwards, so they're self-conscious, right? They're self-reflective, And generally, guilt is a lot shorter than shame. Shame is very much like long-term. And I will explain the differences and why guilt is shorter and shame is longer. So if you're feeling a prolonged sense of, you're trying to decipher if it's guilt or shame, guilt is incredibly short. So if you're like kind of stewing in it, you're hitting shame territory. And that's where you need some forgiveness, but I will get into it. A lot of times with emotions, since they do have an underlying sensory component, you can kind of give yourself a systems check, like similar to a mechanic. The thing is will it heal you completely? No. Like if someone has busted your windshield, you can go to the mechanic and they can do like a tune-up, but ultimately you're going to need some like specialty stuff to like replace a windshield. This is kind of just like general checkup for your system to try to like figure out what's wrong. For example, like a lot of people, they say that their nose is stuffy, but they could also feel stuffy. Now, stuffy is like a lot of stuff, right? And so the thing is usually it pertains to like a house. And the thing is your body, when you breathe out, you give off CO2, right? And then also you give off heat and you give off smells. Everything in your house gives off a smell if there's other people living there, right? And so things can get like, it'd be like, starting your car in the garage. That is very unwise. Obviously, that is, however, carbon monoxide. But if you are starting to feel stuffy and, there's a lot of smells, a lot of heat, a lot of, people breathing in and out, you may want to open some windows, right? Get some airflow, and that will help that out. And then also, since most morals are rooted in disgust, there is this like therapeutic saying where someone's like, if you hate yourself, take a shower. I do have a pun for that because this is shower thoughts. But if you hate yourself, take a shower, because hate is a very extreme dislike. And if you extremely dislike yourself, you most likely feel like everyone hates you, or like you're a bad person. Bad is a moralized term. Most morals rooted in disgust. So if you feel like you hate yourself, shower, right? You may feel like if you take a shower and you clean yourself, right, it's going to signal like some unconscious things, some subconscious things, and you will feel less disgusting. You will hate yourself less. Is this to say that it will cure you and you will never hate yourself again? No, but temporary relief is relieving, So if you feel like you hate yourself, shower. It's because most morals are rooted in disgust, and in the Bible, I hate this, but yeah, like shame is associated with like an unclean spirit. So cleaning of any sort, especially of the body, will release some shame. And now guilt is another thing, but I'm trying to think. And then another systems check is if you feel like you're, getting really like hot all the time, your hypothalamus is your thermostat in your brain. And the thing is you have to check for internal and external temperature. And so obviously, you could go for like turning on the AC if you're getting too hot. It is better to be cold than hot. You can still get hypothermia, but it's better to be cold than hot. And then internally, what regulates usually temperature, the largest part is your intestines, your organs. So that's why, like, if you were ever a kid and you were playing outside and then you came inside and you were hungry and your mom made you hot soup, you're like, oh, it's because your intestines. So if you're feeling like you're overheating a lot, try to have like a smoothie or some ice cold water. And then also, water is like your coolant for your car. Now, if you don't have coolant in your car, you could overheat the car and it could actually explode. And actually a kind of a similar thing with your body, So always try to drink some ice cold water, and you're like, well, I don't like water, flavored water. Here's the thing, there's like coolant, there's antifreeze. I mean, if you're in a pinch, if you're in a serious emergency and you have no coolant in your car, this is only for serious emergencies only. You could put water in there, but don't ever, if it's not an emergency. But yeah, you're like, okay, chill out. But the thing is I'm a lesbian, so I have to tell you that. Yeah, and also you can use a very high alcohol content beer in emergencies only, for gas, if you've run out of gas. So if you have any Sam Adams in the car, that could get you a couple miles, all right? And then, well, the thing is you're like open container laws. Well, if you put all of them in there. And then the thing is your car will smell like beer. And so it's, officer, I'm not drunk, my car is. Sorry, it's not, that's actually, but it's just in a pinch. I'm trying to think about one, like more advice. Ooh, oh my gosh, this is a big one. Okay. So crying releases tension, right? And so tension is strain. And the thing is if you want to hit them high and hit them low, crying releases endorphins and relieves psychological strain, okay? But the thing is you can also, at the same time, release tension in your body. If you are crying and you start to stretch your upper body, like your back, you can release strain and tension in your body as well as your head at the same time, and that's a double dose of endorphins and some oxytocin. So it'll like, and endorphins are like natural painkillers, so it's like kind of upping the dosage. So if you're ever crying and you're like, how do I make this more effective, start stretching, especially your upper body. Is that some helpful advice?
Oh yeah, taking notes.
Yes. So cry, people cry and stretch. All right. So we're going to get into the neural signatures of shame, embarrassment, and guilt, a Voxel-based meta-analysis of functional neuroimaging studies. Now, guys, all my resources are linked in the bio. You should check them out. Let me have some more water. I'm sorry, I'm so excited. This is like such an exciting topic. Da-da-da. All right. Alrighty. Now, just because guilt is shorter does not mean it's less serious. All right. Guilt is our short king. No, he's serious. All right. So the neural signatures of shame, embarrassment, and guilt. Shame and guilt are self-conscious emotions. Like I said, they are pointing inwards. They play a fundamental role in regulating moral behavior and in promoting the welfare of society. So having too much shame and guilt can like make you police yourself too much, or it's like, okay, like you don't need to like go to jail every time like you forget to call your mom back. Like it's release some shame and release some guilt and just like call her back when you can. You don't, because the thing is if you like imprison yourself every single time you do something wrong, that's community resources. Your presence as a human being is, valuable. Like we're social creatures. We want to connect with you. All right. So these the neural bases of these emotions are uncertain, but in this study they performed a systematic literature review in order to single out functional neuroimaging studies on healthy individuals, specifically investigating the neural substrates of shame, embarrassment, and guilt. Now, embarrassment stems more from shame than guilt because shame is more long-term and it will cause you to hide. And the thing is when you're hiding away from people, you're removed from society, and embarrassment is you did like a social no-no, so like people are you're stupid, so like you're kind of separated. So shame and embarrassment are more linked than embarrassment and guilt. Yeah. All right, so the analysis revealed both guilt and shame/embarrassment were associated with the activation of the left anterior insula, involved in emotional awareness processing and arousal. So guilt-specific areas were located within the left temporoparietal junction, which is thought to be involved in social cognitive processes. And then I made a little note for my theory of mind people, because I know I started to realize that I've collected a few of you, and I'm a huge fan of theory of minds, but I made a little note for you guys. I'm talking too fast because I'm too excited, so one sec. As I drink more Celsius. All right. So the left temporoparietal junction is crucial for beliefs, intentions, and desires. They also play a role in empathy and sympathy. So guilt is more involved with empathy and sympathy and feeling for others, okay? So you feel like you are, there's more empathy with guilt, and then shame is more like less feeling for others and more feeling for yourself, okay? Yeah. So guilt, you feel the other person's pain, you believe you've done wrong, you account for your intentions and desires, but do not negate the impact and harm caused. So moreover, specific activations for shame/embarrassment involved areas related to social pain, the dorsal, anterior, cingulate, and thalamus, and behavioral inhibition, the premotor cortex networks. Yes! So fun. There's also a fun little table involved. Oh my God. So shame targets what we are related to entire self. I am bad. That's why I had an episode a couple weeks back where I was like, we should take bad off the emotion wheel, because bad is already like basically baked into shame, because it's like about morality, but bad is a moral, like a judgment call, and there's no way that a judgment call is a primary emotion. And then the target of guilt is what we do related to specific behaviors. What I did has been bad. So guilt, it's more like, you did something bad. Shame is I am bad. And then shame is interpersonal. It occurs only with others. And then guilt is intrapsychic. It occurs alone. Shame activates pain. It's more painful. And then guilt is less painful. Shame is difficult to recognize. And guilt is easy to recognize, because guilt is shorter and it's usually accompanied by like some acceptance of wrongdoing, and acceptance requires like a truth involved. And so a shame, actually, I'll get to it. Oh, I'm actually too excited and now I'm like out of breath. Is this too much information though, all at once?
I'm following. I do have a question.
Yes.
Maybe this is guilt or shame, but where's the line between what's culturally taught and what's innate to us? Like my dog can feel ashamed if she has a bad haircut or she did something wrong. She might feel ashamed or guilty. Or people might feel shame based on what they did in the context of their culture.
Well, the thing is emotions are sensations that have been socialized. So like your culture teaches you like how to respond to certain sensations. And that's what ultimately makes that interpretation of those sensations. There's somatic sensations are what becomes emotions. But I cannot speak on your dog, because dogs...
I only mentioned my dog to say it, like to use her as an example of, she didn't learn something culturally.
Yeah. I don't know if dogs can feel shame. They can know that maybe they did something wrong and that's like they're being punished. Like maybe you yelled and then they responded in the moment. The thing is that's why you probably shouldn't punish a dog like 30 minutes after the fact, because there is nothing to pair it with. It won't make sense and it'll just seem like you're being cruel. So like if they poop inside and then you're like you hold their face over it immediately, they'll be like, and then you yell, they're pairing pooping inside with yelling. If you like circle back 30 minutes later, they'll be like, that's been there. Why are we just now reacting? But yeah, so like the thing is you have to have that feeling at the moment to learn, how to interpret it if the feeling is completely gone. Wait, what was the other cultural question?
Well, I guess my question is how do we distinguish what's innate in our being to what's learned in both shame and guilt?
Well, shame and guilt are like kind of baked into morals and like Christianity. And I mean, there are if you can remove Christianity and get into like morality, but like since most morals are rooted in disgust, and like I talked about, disgust is like visceral disgust, and then like moral disgust, which is if you smell a group of people, you can make a generalization about that and you assume that all of those people are bad. And so that smell, which is innate, like you can smell something that is repelling and be like, oh, that person is bad. Bad is different from repelling, so that leap, like that association, that's, I can say, oh, this all smells like repelling, but labeling it bad and like their bad as a whole, right? As opposed to their behavior or their smell in that moment. You know, like how it said, guilt is related to a behavior. Like if someone farts and you smell it and you're like, oh, that's, oh, guilty as charged, you know, but if they constantly smell like poop, then it's like kind of shameful, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then also the thing is like we, mainly it's like there's like an X and Y axis of like you know, comfort and uncomfortable, and then connected and disconnected are kind of like the basic things, where comfort and then discomfort is more like the art realm and the expression, and then connection and disconnection is like for survival, you know, where like it's, so empathy is more based around connection, like my last podcast episode where it's like fear is the oldest emotion because you need it for survival. You need to be able to recognize when someone's a predator, and like that is scary, and that kind of sets off something in your brain to get out of there. And that's fear is related to the eyes. Like I need to see a predator, and then you can also smell when something's decaying. And then for visceral disgust, you can taste if something is decaying and poisonous, if you should like spit it out. And then maybe you hear something like a growl or whatever, or, you know, or someone crying, and then crying is like, or laughing, you know, laughter is a social glue. So like you also kind of have the involuntary reflex to like laugh. And so then all these, you know, evolutionary things like evolve into, you know, emotions in different cultures. What's cool is that emotions probably started around like 6 million years ago. And what was happening evolutionarily with human beings 6 million years ago was like the first, you know, breaking apart from like apes to human beings. So we're like walking upright and stuff like this. And then you can think about the role of like, as opposed to walking on all fours, and then like the gravity, right? And like higher altitudes do affect you know, perception of time and like, you know, your experiences. And even though you're only standing on two legs, that, I mean, there's like, I talked about like time dilation where something can go, you know, slower at sea level or slower on the floor versus like kind of faster, very, very minorly on the table. And then you can think about like, you know, people traveling across like the world. If you move to literal higher altitudes, you know, you can age faster, and also the climates are a bit colder. So, you know, you're living in maybe isolation. And then also coldness, like literally like your body is getting cold. You're kind of, you know, warmth is actually very literal. Like someone is warm and inviting. And so that's, you know, you're going to be more open to receiving others in warmer environments. And so like you can see all these sort of things branch out over like a period of human evolution.
Beautiful.
Yes! This week's episode of Shower Thoughts is sponsored by Headspace. Have you ever had this conversation? You meet someone, they say, hey, how you doing? And without thinking, you're like, I'm fine, I'm good. Well, I've decided when I say I'm fine, I'm good, I want to mean it. And that's why I'm using Headspace. Headspace is the app that helps me and 100 million people with their mental health and well-being with guided meditations, mindfulness practices, breathing and calming exercise, and so much more. I am reducing stress, boosting my mood, and sleeping better. What I love with Headspace is that I also just read this book on mindfulness, and it talked about getting into a flow state and being present. And I always talk about being present, you know, present in like living and life and love. They're all emergent properties that must happen in the present, especially in flow states. And so I have just been really liking Headspace, honestly. So feel good and mean it when you say it. For a limited time, get Headspace free for 60 days. Go to headspace.com/shower. That's HEADSPACE.com/shower to unlock all of Headspace free for 60 days. Headspace.com/shower. All right, so shame and guilt. The emotional perception of shame is difficult to recognize. Yeah, guilt is easy. Shame, the action tendency. Yeah, shame motivates hiding and inhibition. Guilt motivates reparation of the situation. Yeah, okay, so shame motivates hiding. That's why, like, you should really never shame an alcoholic, someone with an eating disorder, someone, like, kind of with a bad partner, because the thing is they're more likely to hide the behaviors. That's why they're in recovery spaces. Shame is absolutely not allowed. Tough love is allowed, but the thing is this tough love comes from immediate community. You have to have some obvious immediate link to the community. Yeah, and so then for shame with relation with aggression, hostility, violence, externalization, shame increased for shame-proneness individuals. So like they're more likely to be hostile, violent, aggressive, externalize it. And then for guilty people, they're not going to be as much. And then for scapegoating, shame, the people with shame mainly blame others, and then people with guilt blame themselves. And then responsibility when it comes to shame is usually deflected outwards. And then responsibility for guilt is accepted. So the thing is it's hard to distinguish between shame and guilt. But the thing is if you feel like everyone else is kind of the problem, then that's most likely an indicator that you feel ashamed, and you kind of blame others. It may be accompanied by like a sort of victim mentality because you're like, oh, I'm bad, I'm not good. And then the thing is bad could be like you're trying to like maybe comfort yourself being like, oh, no, I'm not bad. Everyone does bad things to me. But then if everyone does bad things to you, that means like that's a continuous trait, like that's not a temporary emotional state. And so guilt is shorter because you kind of accept, oh, I did something wrong and I blame myself. So if you mainly blame yourself, you feel guilty. If you mainly blame others, you feel ashamed. But I mean, that's just kind of general measurements. If you'd like to go through the chart, it is linked below. And this is obviously for individualistic emotions, mainly in the West, individualistic cultures. If you're from a collectivist culture and you're like, not necessarily, I totally understand what you're saying. And that's the thing is I've been saying that. If emotions follow the laws of thermodynamics, the saying, nobody can make you feel anything without your permission actually is not true. And, sharing of emotions is, joint attention is possible. So yeah, you can share emotions. Okay. So guilt is accepted, shame is deflected outward. Accepting a feeling, which involves a hard truth, will cut the duration down significantly. Because truth weighs down a feeling. And so now it's just like, oh, there it is. And it's a moment of learning. Whereas opposed to shame is a continuous wave, like it's like sitting like next to a campfire and then it just keeps blowing on you. That's shame. Guilt is like just finishing a cigarette and then putting it out. Okay. So if the difference between shame and embarrassment is not clear cut, the thing is they just said it's not clear cut. It is clear cut. So guilt occurs when the violation of social norms induces harm or suffering to the individuals, typically in a relationship or among members of the same group. So guilt, yeah, like usually you feel guilty for something you did to someone, differently from shame and embarrassment, in which the self and the persona respectively are perceived as defective. In guilt, a specific action is typically perceived as wrong. The occurrence of guilt induces remorse and behavioral responses that aim to repair the wrong action. This difference in the focus of shame and guilt, self-oriented and other-oriented, respectively, has important consequences on empathy for other people, while guilt tends to increase the empathetic concern towards other people. Empathetic responses seem to be disrupted by the self-oriented distress associated with shame. Yeah. So you're not really going to empathize with others the more shame you feel. As an alcoholic, yeah, you're like, I'm the ultimate victim, dude. Why am I so depressed? I'm only drinking like a major depressant. Dude, oh my gosh, that's like probably the most embarrassing thing ever is like when I was like still heavily drinking and I talked to my therapist and I was like, I'm totally different. Like I'm unfixable. You don't understand the depths of hell I've been to. And she's like, do you drink a lot? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, so you're taking depressants and you're wondering why you're depressed? And then, yeah, like in the mornings, if I had a therapy appointment in the mornings, I'd be like, I'm just so riddled with anxiety. This is something I can't fix. And she's like, so are you going through withdrawal? Are you hungover? And I'd be like, yes. And she's like, so that is actually quite common. It's kind of embarrassing as an alcoholic because you're like, you think that you're so uniquely damaged. And she's like, this is textbook. Of course, you're going to feel anxious when you're hungover. And of course, you're going to feel depressed when you're drinking a depressant. I actually don't know what to tell you. Okay. Now, shame does involve embarrassment, humiliation, or disgrace, okay, due to actions or circumstances. So I'm going to give you a refresher on grace, which is disgrace's nicer sister. Grace, it's honor or credit to someone or something by one's presence. So if you give yourself some grace, grace by definition is unearned, right? So you show up for yourself and you don't really, you don't really owe it to yourself. You just show up for yourself, and that's, yeah. So grace is showing up for yourself. And the thing is people are like, what does that mean? It means being present. To show up, you have to be here in this moment, presence and present. Yes. You show up for yourself. You stop asking if you deserve it, because that'd be besides the point with grace. And you feel the shame start to subside, right? The more you start showing up for yourself, the more you start like kind of breaking apart the things you've done wrong. You see them clearly case by case. You're like, I was guilty in that. I was guilty in that. That one is up in the air. I need a jury. That one, I didn't do anything wrong. But then the more you can start to like be like, I did that. That one actually wasn't me. I did that. You can start to like kind of clear up the guilt first, and then the shame will start to subside. But you have to be present, and you have to, the thing is grace is cutting yourself some slack. Yeah, cut yourself some slack. Because you're a human being. Human beings make mistakes. The thing is, yeah, I mean, mistakes are bound to happen. Everyone makes mistakes. It says Hannah Montana. Jesus Christ, did we all not listen to that? But, yeah. So how do you show up for yourself? You're present in the present. You become aware of your movements, your actions. You attend to yourself, and attending to yourself is focused attention that is healing, right? If someone is attending to you in a hospital, right? They are the attending. They are taking care of you, and their attention is focused, right? Focus on yourself in the moment, which requires being present. And you start to take care of yourself and work through some shit and correct some mistakes, So if you get hurt emotionally or physically, you respond. You care for yourself in respective ways. So here's an example of how to show up for yourself in moments of shaming. Examples. If you tell yourself, oh, you're a terrible person, you might have done something wrong, but terrible is, shame. It's, your total being is terrible. That is incorrect. You've done some terrible things. That does not mean you're a terrible person. Unless you are kind of committed to being terrible. And in that case, you probably don't even feel shame. You feel kind of sort of powerful. If you're a tyrant, you more feel in control. And in this case, that is actually some different processes in the brain. So yeah, you wouldn't really, this sort of shame exercise actually doesn't apply to you. So if you're like, oh, some people are objectively terrible, well then this is, then they're not feeling shame. And so it's kind of like separate. Another way to show up for yourself is when you tell yourself you're not worthy of love. You could say, I'm worthy of love by virtue of the fact that I'm a human being. Sure, I may not be loved by certain people, but others don't determine my worth, as I'm not a tool to be appraised. So like you can't be unworthy of love and someone deem you unworthy of love because you're worthy by the fact that you're a human being. And love is just, attending to yourself carefully and healing yourself in the moment. Really, love is an emergent property. If you're like focused attention on healing and caring for yourself, that is love. A lot of people are like, I've never felt love. You actually probably have. If you've stopped and taken care of yourself and, wanted to be better, then yes, you have. I have to make a dedicated episode on love. Because the thing is a lot of us feel like we can't love or we've never been loved. But the thing is much like this research keeps saying, a lot of things aren't clearly defined. So you're like, when what people want to say is like, I don't know if I've experienced love. Or like, I don't know if this counted as love. So I can give you the underlying mechanics, structure of love, and then you can be like, oh yeah, because most of us have. Because I said like a couple episodes back, like love and hate are not opposites. They're both opposite to indifference. And to love and hate, you have to care for something. You have to attend to it, And so it's just a matter of like where your energy goes. Like if you want to hate something, focused attention to hurt, and then loving is like focused attention to heal. And so if you're like, I hate myself, at least you care about yourself. Yeah, if you genuinely didn't give a shit if you lived or died, then that's when you're truly an outlier, and I would love to talk to you. Should I keep this in? Yeah. Okay, so this one is going to be the most autistic way I respond to something ever. So this is how to show up for yourself in moments of shaming. Someone says to you, you deserve the bad things that have happened to you. I apologize, this is long-winded. It's actually 2 pages. Okay, so you deserve the bad things that happened to you. Happened means take place, occur, but also find or come across by chance. Chance is the possibility of something happening, also the occurrence of development of events in the absence of any obvious design. Now, I love statistics, right? And I love chance. So deserve the bad things means your punishment was warranted, but you deserve the bad things that have happened to you means even though the thing that happened was devoid of design, thus intentional lack of planning, aesthetics, or purposefulness in their creation or arrangement. So thus, altogether, you deserve to be punished for random accidents, things that had no logical structure or purpose. That does not make any sense. Punishment is a corrective action, but how can you correct an action if they had no clear cause, were accidents, and could have happened to anyone? Punishment without cause is revenge or spite and is not legitimate punishment. In the legal system, there's a principle called nulla pena sine culpa, or no punishment without guilt, meaning an individual cannot be punished for actions they're not guilty of. You're like, this is so autistic. And you don't have to memorize this. This is my full response to someone who says you deserve the bad things that have happened to you. So you deserve the bad things that have happened to you means that you, who's ever saying that to you, don't understand probability and chance, thus statistics, so your math is not mathing, and I imagine that affects many areas of your life. You too don't understand law and order. I imagine that also affects many areas of your life. 3, if you don't understand the basics of morality, as law and order morality is something you should have developed when you were 8 to 13 years old. So if you can't grasp that basic concept, you should really see a developmental psychologist, as that definitely affects many areas of your life. 4, if they respond, it's not that deep, that means they don't understand the logical structure of an argument, the concrete facts of the case, therefore there's no way that they can think critically, consider nuance and context. Their declaration of what you deserve is out of their intellectual and emotional domain. They have no sensible authority or jurisdiction here, or anywhere. If they have no authority, jurisdiction, and they're worried about your life, especially considering they don't even understand law and order, that's considered other-oriented perfectionism. Other-oriented perfectionism is associated with the dark triad of personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Not saying that they're all those things, but they're in the danger zone. I would say to them, you're projecting your life experiences onto me. You don't understand punishment. Therefore, punishment does probably come out of nowhere for you, when in reality it's justified to your likely heinous, callous, and harmful actions. You will never develop meaningful connections, you are unable to empathize, and that hollowness will continue to consume you. You dehumanize yourself when you dehumanize others, and not even animals punish for no reason. You're not even an animal, you're nothing. Continued, you lash out, try to spur a reaction from me because you need to feel something to prove your existence. You feel threatened by someone hurt. You are weak. Weak? Nonsensical, devoid of original thought, or any type of complexity. You're pathetic and I pity you. Take my sadness and have fun. Existentially flatlining. Okay, bonus. If they start to laugh, they're in pain. Laughter releases endorphins, which diffuses pain. Laughter is also social glue, so they're in pain and unconsciously trying to bond with you, which releases oxytocin, the love hormone. They're in pain and they're lonely, disconnected from self and other. Don't laugh back. Reject their lame attempt at bonding, just as their parents likely did. Extra bonus. If they look away or turn away to hit something, they're afraid and can't handle it. Most fear stimuli is taken in through the eyes. On top of what I said, they're afraid, hurting, and lonely. That was so autistic. Anyway, if someone says, you deserve the bad things that happen to you, tell them you're afraid, lonely, hurting, weak, you have no authority here. Get the fuck away from me. So don't internalize that message. The thing is if they don't understand law and order morality, right, is like to be punished of a crime, you have to like prove that you meant to, like there has to be like guilt, an admission of guilt, or like a declaration of guilt. So if they don't understand law and order morality, then their behavioral moral development is kind of stuck before the age of 8. So you're talking to an actual child. Was that too autistic?
Too autistic for me.
Too autistic. Sorry, but hopefully my autistic people like that. Don't listen to those people. They're jackass assholes who didn't get hugged. Or who this, I mean, you could kind of break it down by what they said. Like, they probably stopped being hugged generally around the age 6. You should tell them that. Like, they just say, you deserve all the bad things that happen to you. I can tell you that you probably stopped being hugged at the age of 6. And if they laugh about it, say people laugh when they're in pain. Okay. At least if you were to cry, you'd release some tension. If you were to cry about it, you should probably also stretch your shoulders too. It'll make you feel better. But yeah, I'm glad we had that talk. We also discussed pity last time, and that's why I kind of wanted to end up on that note. Pity is more sympathy, empathy related. And then we also had fear, pity and fear. But okay, back to forgiveness. Oh, this is going to be long. An individual with a smaller insular cortex region of the brain associated with disgust is more likely to be forgiving. The function of the insula is important for gustatory. Oh, I love being right. Okay, the insula is important for gustatory, concerned with taste, sense of taste, and sensory motor processing, risk-reward behavior, pain pathways, auditory and vestibular functioning. Okay, so gustatory, your visceral sensations, visceral disgust. Yeah. So, yeah, that's, so individual with a smaller insular cortex, which is associated with disgust, and it's important for, and there's 2 types of disgust, branching off from the tumbus and your smell, So it's just, it's a visceral sensation. I'm sorry. I want to get more cohesive and understood. Is that part understood?
Are you saying that it's literally biological?
Well, visceral disgust is more biological than moral disgust, because the thing is you eat something poisonous, you actually should be afraid and throw up, and then you should be repelled from it and then never return to whatever the hell was poisonous or decaying.
Okay.
Yes, and it's great because I actually will circle back to auditory and vestibular functioning with my exercise I said I was going to do last time. Okay, yeah, so I did want to get into respiratory neurobiology, but basically I'll include the link, but I want to do the exercise, and then you can experience fear in a myriad of sensory ways, but most fear stimuli is taken in through the eyes. Yeah, so the insula, many functions, peripheral. Yeah, okay. Let's keep going. Yeah, so the insular part of the limbic system is anterior part is deeply involved in conscious desires like search for drugs or food. So tummy again, tummy. So I do have an exercise for you guys, and I'm going to drink some water and kind of relax for a second because I was talking at a very rushed pace because I wanted to get to this. Now, if this is this is not from a therapist point of view, but it is just based in neuroscience and how your brain works. But we're going to talk about sadness because, like I said, we were focusing so much on guilt and shame and disgust and empathy, but heightened levels of depression will make you less forgiving. So depression has to do with sadness. Now, this exercise will not cure you of depression, obviously, and please run this by a therapist. And if you're a therapist, I'd love to hear your input. But we're going to talk about sadness, okay? Sadness is the emotion with the longest duration, and most sadness comes in through the ears. You can still receive sadness signals from elsewhere, but most sadness, again, through the ears. So I'm going to talk about positive self-talk, literally. So this is background. You have 2 ears that utilize a process called localization. It allows the brain to pinpoint the direction and distance of a sound source. 2 key components of localization is direction and distance, right? So your inner ear is your vestibular and cochlear parts of your ear, cochlear. Your outer ear is part of the vagus nerve sensory system. Okay, so your inner ear is its own sensory system. Your outer ear is part of the vagus nerve sensory system, which Motor elements, heart, lungs, bronchi, gastrointestinal tract, and then sensory elements, heart, lungs, bronchi, trachea, larynx, pharynx, and then some other stuff. So your outer ear is part of, your vagus nerve system. This is important, guys. I'm going to move this down. When we hear ourselves talk, we may experience voice confrontation. It's related to self-confrontation. It's where you don't like the sound of your own voice. The auditory perception of your own voice is different when you hear your voice live versus through recordings, right? So a lot of people don't like how they sound when they're, they hear themselves back. It's because, it's only you hear yourself through your skull as well as through the air. So there's air and then, bone. So it will make your voice in your head sound lower, right? So on tape, you're going to sound a lot higher than and so you're like, that's not me, right? Like, that's not what I sound like. It sounds different because you're also hearing the vibrations through your skull. Okay, bone conductance. When you hear, the source of a sound is another person, which means the waves are received through the air, okay? However, when you hear your own voice, the source of the sound is through your vocal cords, and it's traveling through your body to your ears and kind of bouncing around your skull. Okay. So bone conductance bypasses the eardrum. Okay, you know what? There's a whole bunch of stuff like this, but I could get into the specifics of that. So, hearing your voice when you speak will sound lower. When it's recorded, it will sound higher. Most sadness is taken in through the ears, and your ears localize sound with direction and distance. That is what you need to remember. So this is the exploration. Listen to exactly what I say. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to do some hand motions, but also I'll try to describe what I'm doing. All right. Stop and listen to your thoughts. Let the negative self-talk come. Play the same negative thoughts, those involving shame and guilt. Just let those play for a second in your head and listen to them. Now, notice that it feels like someone is talking to you. You're like, of course, it's me. No, listen, it feels like someone is talking to you. What I need you to do now is notice what direction it is coming from. Not the person, not a family member. What literal direction is it coming from and where is it moving to? Okay? So example, does the negative self-talk feel like it's crossing in front of you? Does it feel like it's coming from behind? Does it feel like it's coming from slightly above you? Find the direction in where it is coming from. Listen to it. Is it over your shoulder? Right? Is it like coming straight down at you? Okay? When we talk to ourselves, our voice is usually inside our head coming from slightly in front of us. That's 2 data points for direction. If you want to use your hands for this to like point an arrow, if you hold your finger up and slightly away from your mouth, about an inch, and then you open your mouth and put one finger on the roof of your mouth, holding the first finger outside and the second finger at the roof. If you were to draw an imaginary line inwards from those 2 data points, right, that is you. That is where your voice is coming from. So, your range is right in front of you and straight on. Now back to the negative self-talk. Where did the sound come from? What direction and what distance? Did it come from over your shoulder? Did it swoop in or go through you? If the sound does not match where you held both your fingers, that is not your voice, right? If the self-talk does not come from the inch that you held in front of your mouth and then in your mouth, that is not your voice. It is literally someone else. That is not you. That is negative talk that you have internalized, right? If it's coming from above on your right, if it's coming from your spine, it's coming from your shoulder, if it's crossing in front of your face, that self-talk, that negative self-talk is not actually you. If you feel it right towards your mouth and coming into your mouth, then that negative self-talk is you. But why this is important is because, if you want to discern, is this me or is this someone else, right? So we're going to put it into action. Relax and imagine yourself 10 seconds in the future, right in front of you, facing you. Like hold your hand up in front of your face and imagine that your face is right there. Now, do not allow any voices from anywhere but right in front of you and straight on, okay? So if it's not in that range that I described, just imagine yourself and do not allow any voices from top or side or beneath. Now say something reassuring to yourself. Compliment yourself. Say you love yourself. Did you do it?
I did it.
Does it feel weird?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know that if you like, you can almost like push the voices away.
Here's what was weird is when I picture myself right in front of myself, I liked that guy.
Yeah. And the thing is you've probably never talked to him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it's your negative self-talk is everything that's wrong with you. If you compliment yourself, this is probably your first interaction, which is like you.
Right.
Doesn't that feel good?
Yeah, because I feel like typically I'm trying to take on what other people might think or feel, and telling myself those things.
Yeah. So that actually did feel unusual?
It did.
Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Run that by your therapist. But yeah, I did it the first time and I cried because I felt like, I feel like I hear so much, and then just being able to know exactly like this is my voice versus like this is someone else's, because how your brain, like your ears localize the sound. So if it's like coming from somewhere that your mouth is literally not in that region, then that is not your voice. It's a memorized voice. And like how you always forget what someone said, but you remember how they make you feel. You also kind of, but you can kind of discern if it's you or not. But yeah, so that's a new lesson. New beginnings are an opportunity to talk, positive self-talk with yourself. And so it's a way to, I know that the sadness, depression is more than just sadness, but if you're having a hard time, tuning out voices and you're like, is all this shit talking me? Try that exercise, notice and where it's coming from, and then realize like, and then try to imagine yourself like a couple or like 10 seconds in the future, and don't allow any voices from surrounding, and just give yourself a nice little compliment, and tell yourself you love yourself. This is however, a note for performers, singers, comedians, public speakers, content creators. Do not shit talk yourself into a mic, okay? Especially if you have an earpiece in. You want this exercise to keep working. If you're going to shit talk yourself, constructive criticism is different, but if you're going to shit talk yourself, turn away from the mic, or, make sure that you can't hear yourself in the amps or the speakers, right? Because then it's going to be hard to localize your own voice. And then comedians, for self-deprecating jokes, make sure that the self-deprecating shit is heavily rehearsed, concise, and broken apart. Break up the sadness. And then try to keep any sort of negative self-talk riffing to an absolute minimum. If you're going to riff on something, make it someone else, not yourself. This is if you're a comedian who's depressed, a singer who's depressed, and you want to keep being able to localize your own voice correctly, then try not to listen to yourself shit talk yourself into a mic. Please run this by a therapist. I will link the resources below. That was so much fun. I've never done an exercise before. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. It was slightly uncomfortable, but yeah, I like it.
It was uncomfortable?
I think so.
What happened?
Oh, nothing bad happened. I think it's just, it takes a bit to let myself, compliment myself.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but also, hopefully it gets easier, because you're a really cool dude, and I don't say that to straight men.
Thanks. Yeah, I wouldn't either if I were you.
No, but Travis has incredible style. Like, both Rebecca and I were talking about this. Travis is would be an amazingly dressed lesbian.
That's what I go for.
Yeah, you're doing great. All right, so this is going to be an example of how to forgive yourself, and then use that previous tactic to get yourself in the headspace, in the great emotional space. I'm going to be breaking down a Christian prayer, not because I want to convert you, but because the underlying structure is important, and, just the performance of it will help, inform how forgiveness usually goes. You can do this same sort of thing to any religious prayer, any spiritual prayer, any, the thing is it's not because I need you to be religious, it's because religions have there's a huge theme of forgiveness. And so they're it's either this or I read some court documents to you guys. I mean, I could, but yeah. So this is an example. If you don't, I don't. Okay, yeah. So, dear God, I come to you with a repentant heart. I acknowledge my sins and ask for your forgiveness. May your boundless love and grace wash over me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate that. So, dear God is obviously directed towards God. We need to edit it towards ourselves because we're trying to forgive ourselves. And then I come to you is a reminder to be present, grounded. So I'm going to link some grounding techniques. So, dear God, I come to you is just, hey, Sarah, I'm here and I'm doing some grounding techniques to be present. Also, you can do the sadness, tune out the sad exercise, speak to yourself. I'd actually recommend doing that before you do this as it'll be more impactful and you can tune out the voices that make you sad. Yeah. So in this instance of forgiveness, So with a repentant, meaning remorseful, regretful, or shameful, and then heart is your inner disposition, including your thoughts, emotions, will, and moral character. And then, quote, I acknowledge my sins, aka is I admit I've done wrong. And then, so I'm trying to translate this quickly and I'll give a total overview. And then ask for your, again, is a need to edit to direct it at yourself. So asking for, in this case, would be a cross-examination. So since you've directed it at yourself, you're examining the facts of the case in close detail, a careful consideration of the entire situation. And then forgiveness is trying to make it not religious, is to release myself from this anger, resentment, shame, and guilt I'm harboring for myself. And then may your boundless love means I promise I will love myself without limit. And then grace wash over me. Grace is refinement of movements. It's courteous. So just kind of, it would translate to and adjust my behaviors to honor myself and regain well-being and happiness. And happiness, that's a key ingredient to love. So altogether, I'm going to read you the translated version. So try to get grounded, do the sadness exercise. This is how you would forgive yourself. I've done wrong in my life, and for that, I am ashamed. Sitting here, I've walked through the thoughts and felt my emotions. I've accepted the weight and consequences of my actions. I'm willing, able, and ready to adjust my behaviors so that it will accurately reflect who I am and who I want to be. My words represent my principles, and my principles have been written by me. For them to mean anything, I must uphold and be true to them. I am the authority of my life, the judge, jury, and executioner. If I want any hope of releasing shame, I must honor and trust what I said I believe in and stand for. I alone can forgive myself, and it can only happen when I am honest with what I've done wrong. Speaking truth to power is justice. Since I am the power and speaking these truths, this is justice. I promise to right these wrongs and show up for myself with discipline. Discipline does not mean punishment. It means disciple. Disciples serve and follow just orders consistently. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I say and do this because I love myself and will do so without limit. I look forward to proving that, as it's one of the strongest expressions of self-love, and I am true to my word. So that would be the that would be the non-religious translation of that. And, that's kind of a breaking down of like how to forgive yourself. So you understand the neurological basis, how, disgust can be overwhelming, and so the thing is like I said with the first episode, which I really wish you guys, if you didn't, please listen to it, is that forgiveness does involve a sort of like, purging, and not literally purging, but like purgation, which is forgiveness. And so like, purgation, clarifying, and like cleansing, right? So I talked about Aristotle and like an esthetician POV, but like it's a privilege to forgive yourself, right? Like it's something that you should do every single day. If you feel ashamed every day, it's a call to, at some point when you're doing, maybe even try to pair it with like a cleaning activity, whether that be like taking a shower or like actually cleaning, again, run this by a therapist, is like, if you feel ashamed every day, you should try to go over what you feel ashamed of or guilty of, and then sit with it and see if you can, if there was genuine malice and intention, impact, go over the facts of the case, even if they're small. And then, some things are accidents, and that's kind of just like, let's dismiss that. But if you did something genuinely wrong, or you feel like you wronged yourself, like make a time in the day to like forgive yourself. And then I'm going to raise my standards and do better. Because the thing is I did talk about, sort of legal parallel. But, yeah, so the thing is also with religious prayers, they're usually done at a certain type of day, like before eating or before going to bed. But before eating is incredibly important. Like, like bless this food, and then most morals rooted in disgust, and then visceral, and like the role of, eating and sugar and giving you energy and filling you up with life, right? And so forgiveness is not a punishment. It's, it's release, right? It's relieving. If you feel like, it's like thinking of forgiving yourself as a punishment, or like asking for forgiveness as a punishment, is like thinking of the gym as punishment. It's like thinking of eating healthy as punishment. It's like thinking of taking care of yourself and the environment as punishment. Like if you go to the gym with the mindset, oh, this is a punishment for how I look, that's not going to be sustainable. If you start eating healthier, or just like being more mindful, and you're like, this is a punishment, then that's not going to last long either. And so each one of those will just be like, steeped in shame. So you get to, exercise, you get to eat healthy, you get to take care of yourself, clean your space, you get to refresh yourself, because it's rewarding, right? It's maintenance. It's like keeping up with yourself. It's self-respect, And the thing is you don't have to go to the gym every day. You do have to eat every day. You don't have to clean every day. But the thing is you should be trying to actively, releasing this guilt and this shame on a sort of weekly basis. Because the thing is in a society built on like, you're bad for just existing, or you're bad if you can't work, or you're bad if you're tired, right? Like you may internalize those lessons. So while it is like an external force, like if you internalize it, then you do have to, manually release that from your psyche and it just kind of consumes your body. So yeah, forgiving yourself is a care task. It's like how the doctor's like, walk 30 minutes every day. Just spend like a couple minutes, like when you're doing something more mindful, more attentive, more taking care of yourself, that you like forgive yourself. Because it's cleansing, it's relieving, and it's healing, and it is love. And it's speaking truth to power. And if you're being honest and you are the authority, then that's justice. Okay. So thank you guys so much for listening to this. I'm sorry if I made any of you feel weird with the sad exercise. It's supposed to be like a moment. But yes, please run all this by your therapist. All of the resources will be linked. You could send all those resources to your therapist. I always recommend talking to a doctor or specialist. Even though I know that I'm reading from actual research, I'd still also, it's wonderful to consider their point of view. And I hope you all can learn to forgive yourself, and right your wrongs and write your constitutions, because we're in like a constitutional crisis right now. And a constitutional crisis is where like the president disobeys or goes against the Constitution. And so we're now in crisis. And the thing is your principles are your Constitution. So if you keep betraying your principles, you will also be in crisis, crisis mode. You're going to get more erratic, right? Like it's going to become incredibly unfair. It's going to spiral out of control. So like your word, right? Stay like, know what you do and do not stand for. And, even it doesn't have to be like a constitution. It doesn't have to be the Constitution at all. Oh, Jesus. But like, if you're like, all people are created equal, but you don't treat everyone equally, then, and you feel some sort of weirdness, you feel some sort of crisis or like some badness at the end of the day. And you're like, what could that be from? It's like, well, did you treat a couple people better than you treated other people for absolutely no reason? Your brain, even if you don't remember what you said, the feelings will remain. If you treated some people, like your friends, you should obviously treat them better. But if you randomly treated someone like shit and you like, forgot what you said to this person, you're still gonna, that's not what I said I believed in. And now you're gonna feel this sort of weird feeling that's not attached to words. Okay? So like being true to your word really does matter. And that's also why speaking these things out loud can be more, impactful, because it's kind of like, it's like a verbal contract. And only your signature, your name, that is your authority saying that this verbal contract is valid. And if you keep breaking these contracts and lying to people and lying to yourself, then it's like no one's going to want to do business with you. You won't want to do business with yourself. But yeah. So I hope that you guys learned something, and I hope you feel better, and I hope you learn to forgive yourself because you deserve it. And thank you guys. This has been Schauer Thoughts. New episodes every Wednesday. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and rate me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.